Assertiveness training is a major communication training technique that was developed in the early 70s. And it actually came out partially of the women's movement, because it was discovered that a lot of women used primarily passive communication style. And so it was very much part of consciousness raising groups and consciousness awareness groups in terms of women's role in the world. But it coincided with the development of cognitive behavioral techniques in general and was actively pursued as a major problem-solving communication training technique. In assertiveness training, we teach people that there are several voices that they can speak from. The first one is a passive voice, where although there's something that they're quite unhappy about, they really don't say anything, and there's no direct addressing or confrontation about issues that may be of concern, emotional upset, or distress. The second approach that's also fairly dysfunctional is the aggressive approach, where people let disappointments, annoyances, bothersome feelings add up until they kind of explode. And when they explode, very often they're not sensitive, and it comes out in anger. People say things they don't mean, threats are made, ultimatums, sometimes even painful words or hitting, throwing. A third approach is the assertive approach. And in the assertive approach, an individual comes forth and says what they're concerned about, but they take into consideration the wants, needs, and feelings of the other person. In addition to these three major approaches, there's also the passive-aggressive approach, where someone is upset, they don't say anything, but they express themselves non-verbally or through actions such as forgetting things. A classic example was a wife who's distressed with her husband, so she's ironing his shirt, and instead of ironing it well, she leaves creases, or even worse, she burns it. People coming late to appointments, forgetting things, somehow expressing their anger without real awareness. It's not an intentional passive-aggressive choice that people make, but rather unintentionally suppressing the expression of their negative feelings and unintentionally expressing it through nonverbal means. So in assertiveness training, we try to teach assertive communicating. And while this is easy to say and to write about, and actually fairly easy to talk about with clients, it's much, much harder to do in real life. And even therapists have difficulty being assertive about their own lives, their own issues, because when emotions are high, people tend to block up, their cognitions diminish, they become less fluid verbally, they become less able to express themselves in a reasonable fashion. Their emotions kind of overwhelm their words. They certainly overwhelm their ability to express their feelings coherently in the moment. So often there's time taken for reflection, kind of almost a script that we develop to come back to the individual to tell them about our feelings. And so part of this is using the Assertiveness Formula, which is a very simple formula that utilizes 3 steps. The first step is stating to the person what they did in behavioral terms. The second step is stating what we felt, and the third step is stating what we expected them. So the first step of the Assertiveness Formula is when you. When you includes how, when, where, what happened. Simple behavioral description, like when you left your shoes on the floor. The next part is I felt. I felt 5 basic feelings. Happy, love, those are positive, angry, sad, and frightened. So that we try to make it very simple, use very simple, clear words. Very few people can confuse the difference between sad and fearful. Whereas when we use words like disappointed or confused, we're really talking more about cognitions than about feelings. And then the last part of the assertiveness formula is a simple statement of what you would like. This needs to be something kind of legal, something possible, and there's no expectation that the other individual will comply with our request. So the last part is, and I wish that you would pick up your shoes and put them in your room. So when you left your shoes in the living room yesterday, I felt angry because I have to pick them up, and I wish that you would put your shoes in your room. A very simple assertiveness formula. We're going to be doing an example with a client, which of course becomes much more complex because the situations are not as pat. The assertiveness formula has to be practiced again and again and again, because in high emotional situations we forget how we're feeling. We forget what to say. And so making it second nature is very, very helpful in the long run.